Okay, well, thank you again and welcome to this UKAA educational session. We're delighted to have some of our technology partners from Engrain on the line, as well as some of our mutual clients. We're quite excited to talk to you about the technology that we've worked on together, and we're also very grateful to have a couple of our clients on the session today to talk about self-guided tours and the underlying Engrain technology that we utilize with that feature of SmartRent. I want to welcome today Brent Steiner. Brent is the CEO of Engrain, and he'll be running through some of the product offering and talking about use cases with a couple of our really valued clients, Brianna, Bocker from Cortland, and Leigh Sublett from Venterra Living, and both of them utilize both the SmartRent self-guided tour applications as well as, again, that underlying Engrain mapping technology. And then Muir Baxter, who's our UK sales director, and I will be helping to facilitate some of the questions as we go. As you have questions, please feel free to submit them onto the Zoom meeting, and we'll make sure that we address those throughout. But without further ado, Brent, why don't I hand it over to you?
Great. Thank you, Phil. Before I show the actual technology, I wanted to provide everybody with a little bit of context to Engrain is, for those of you who are not familiar. We have been providing software solutions, touring solutions, and mapping solutions to the commercial real estate and specifically the apartment space for over 10 years at this point. Our product line includes multiple things, starting with interactive touchscreens. That's how we're most known over here in the US. And then more recently, we launched a mapping platform, which we'll be talking about today. We identified a need pretty early on for interactive maps that could be used throughout the renting process. And most importantly, we wanted to make sure that those maps weren't just used in our own applications. We see a need to have maps in all real estate software applications. And so the first product we went to market with about 3 years ago is called Sitemap. And I'll flip over and actually show you a demo of this shortly. This is one of Cortland's sitemaps, and it is deployed on their websites, and then it is also deployed within their SmartRent environment. And we have plans to deploy it into any other applications that they use, whether they're our own applications or applications used by other vendors. So quick before I launch an actual demo of Sitemap so you can see what it looks like. It can feature any type of content to be used on amenity spaces or actual apartments. This can include photos, videos, virtual tours, etc. Adding maps to your website, we've seen does increase user engagement by between 38 and 60%. We've integrated maps with over 100 website and content partners at this point. So we're very familiar with the different opportunities that are out there to do that. And just this year, Sitemap now supports georeferencing or blue dot awareness, which is very important to a self-guided tour. This will allow a user to actually see their location on the map during the tour, which is critical for understanding context, understanding wayfinding, to know where they're going. Etc. And then very importantly as well, the Sitemap product is WCAG compliant. So for any accessibility features, it will support those. And we're constantly paying attention to ways to make that happen. I'm going to switch over to an actual example of a sitemap here. And then we will talk about specific use cases. So the product itself is integrated with all of our clients' pricing and inventory software. So we know rent amounts, we know inventory, and then obviously location of the actual apartments. We also know from user feedback that renters very much want to know the location of the apartment, and they want as much information about the apartment as you can provide for them. In this case, we have multiple call to action links or ways that a prospect can interact with us. And in Cortland's case, they have the option of scheduling a tour with an agent or a self-guided tour through SmartRent. And this, if I were to click this button, it would actually start that SmartRent workflow. Okay. And then I also wanted to show you just a quick video so you can actually see this in action. This is a short screenshot or a video capture of the SmartRent app. So at this point, somebody who's coming to tour has registered, they've been given all of their information on accessing the property, amenity spaces, and then if they were to click on the view map button on this screen, it will actually open the site map for this property. So it's a very seamless experience. Once the prospect is in the map, within the SmartRent app, they can see where the specific apartment is that they're going to tour, get information on it, activate their location so they can see where they're going and be on their way. So very seamless and powerful integration. And if you're not familiar with SmartRent, it is a smart home platform that has a self-guided touring app as a component of it. And so it provides a seamless end-to-end self-guided touring and access experience for renters. And at this point, I think the true value of this session is actually hearing from operators who have put this into place. So I will continue to share my screen, but wanted to pose a question to both Bree and Leigh from Cortland and Venterra on, when considering self-guided touring, what problem is it that you were trying to solve? And then a little bit about how you did solve that problem. And I'm going to stop sharing and I can turn it back on if we need to, if you want me to show something.
Bree, do you want to go first or do you want me to?
You're welcome to go first if you'd like.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So for us, Cortland, we have been trying to figure out how to implement self-guided tours for quite some time now. It was pretty early on in 2019. We're trying to find a solution that there would be some wayfinding involved. And so come everything that's happened this year, we had COVID set in, kind of made that timeline go a lot quicker. We're all of a sudden, we're like, all right, we need something, we need it now. We want to provide a good socially distanced tour that allowed both our associates to still sell their units that they have, but allow our customers to actually go tour on their own for a more comfort level. And so when we heard that SmartRent was working with Engrain to get these maps into their system and have that wayfinding solution, that was something that helped solve the problem of, well, we have the self-guided tour, we have the units that we can have them go look at, but there's no way to really get them around the community in a seamless manner. So that was something that really helped us push towards SmartRent's solution with Engrain. The mapping in there, being able to actually show that blue dot and geo-reference of where they are in the community and then where they are going to go be touring.
Yeah, our situation is similar to what Bree's is. We've wanted to get into the self-guided tour space for a while, but there's definitely obstacles, not just what Brianna mentioned, such as wayfinding, but just accessibility, which is where SmartRent comes in with gate access and things like that once they actually are on the property. So it really solved for a lot of the logistical problems that we had that really kept us from being able to do it a year or two ago when we wanted to start.
I'm going to chime in just for a minute, and I know I've spoken to both of you, and I think you've done some analysis on some data that you've received from some of your early experience. I think, from SmartRent's perspective, on a big picture basis, I think we've done about 150,000 tours since COVID started. We had the functionality previously, but obviously COVID was a major catalyst to expanding that experience. And we've seen, I think about 80% of users are able to, register within 5 minutes, and our clients are able to extend their hours. But I know, Leigh, it's a little early in the process for you. I think Brianna may have a little bit more data spread out across more properties, but could you talk about sort of where self-guided tours and this Engrain functionality fits into your sales funnel, and maybe speak to some of that data you've collected so far?
Go ahead, Bree. You probably have more data than I do. We're a little bit newer.
Yeah, so I can go ahead. So we have about 60 communities currently on live with SmartRent and having tours day to day. So we saw actually within the last 30 days, we had about 360 tours over the 60 communities. And with that too, we had about 65% of those people who schedule their tours actually show up, which that's a pretty high appointment to tour ratio for us. So it definitely that conversion rate to actually get people on site, get them in a model unit. And then even beyond that, we're able seeing now that, you know, people will come in, it at least is a good way to give them a sneak peek of the community. And then it actually helps to push more of the higher quality leads to the office to help create more efficient time usage for our on-site team members. So when someone does come into the office after their tour, if they do want additional information to talk to somebody to figure out next steps, typically we're seeing that those leads are people who are really interested and actually serious in leasing at the community. So it helps to also kind of weed out maybe people who they would spend their time on a tour and then be like, okay, we're good, and leave. So it at least is helping for the on-site teams to be more efficient, as well as seeing a pretty good completed rate with those tours actually coming and looking at the community.
As Phil mentioned, we're a little bit newer. We've actually worked with Engrain for longer, just on the site map side, but we're a little bit newer, partnering with SmartRent, the SmartRent integration with our Engrain. But Bree, that's good that you're seeing about 65% of actual show-ups. We're around 45% right now. But again, we're a little bit newer at it. So even that is still really good. And as Bree mentioned, you know, people want to see the models and things like that. We've seen up to, you know, 80% of people based on surveys want to see the actual apartment, which is a really big deal for us. You know, we of course have virtual tours and things like that, but they want to see it, and they want to see it after hours on their own time. So it really fills that gap for sure.
Yeah, that was, you know, coming from a technology perspective, sometimes we sort of delude ourselves that it's all about the technology, and we forget that it's really just one of the components and part of the sales funnel. I think before COVID, it was always difficult to communicate in some cases about how, you know, virtual tours and self-guided tours are not substitutes for one another, but about how they're part of that sales funnel and part of that educational process. And, you know, virtual tours oftentimes, you know, when people can look at like the Engrain functionality is just terrific in terms of getting a feel for the property and understanding amenities and different features. But then as those prospects go down the sales funnel, again, your statistic that 80% want to see the site. I also was surprised as Brianna and I were corresponding this week about the Cortland data. Again, being a self-centered technologist, I thought that everyone did self-guided tours, but really it's just a supplemental feature that leasing teams put into place as part of their overall process. I will say that from the data that we see in terms of when people take tours, I still believe it's highly underutilized in terms of extending hours to after hours. It's like any technology, it's not just implementing the technology, but it's modifying your processes to what might work for you. And so I'm just globally speaking of the 100 or so clients that are utilizing this functionality. A lot of times they've kept the same touring hours, which limits that impact of the feature. I'm wondering if I can bring Muir Baxter in. Muir, you have extensive experience in the build to rent sector and with technology. Can you just speak to some of the other use cases that we're seeing in the UK related to this combined SmartRent and Engrain technology?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's great. Obviously, we've seen great use case for the multifamily projects. Equally, I think what we're already seeing here in the UK is a very valid use for the build to sell projects as well, whereby exactly as you mentioned, you've got the sales agents having these show home apartments and they're wanting to extend those hours beyond the typical 9 till 6, 9 till 7 window throughout the week. So that's typically coming on board. But equally, I think we're seeing some use cases, some real interest coming from really any situation that either deals with significant peaks of activity or large volumes of people in a very short time period. So you could look at that maybe, for instance, student as an example. You've got this check-in window, which is typically August to September timeline, and you've got thousands of students all checking into their apartments. Again, this technology would really come into play there, whereby the students would be able to check in and gain access, again, using all of that Engrain technology and route finding straight through to where their apartment or their studio unit is. And also, typically in holiday parks, great use case as well, whereby you've got a very high changeover period, either on a weekly or weekend, fortnightly basis. Typically, those guests don't know the actual route that they need to take. So all of this technology is really, it's really gaining traction already in the marketplace for those, and it's enabling them to have a lot more of a more efficient use of the customer journey, and ultimately a better experience overall.
Yeah, I know. I know that there's more complex and sophisticated words for it, but the blue dot technology to figure out where you are when you don't know where you're going is certainly useful. Yeah. I don't know, Brent, do you have any comments? I know that you do a lot of work in the build for sale or with house builders / home builders. Can you maybe speak to some of the differences in terms of how it's applied in those contexts with a home builder versus in the build to rent or multifamily sector?
We're seeing similar use cases, but I think the most important thing is that when defining a program for self-guided touring, it starts with how are you going to use your people, how are you going to change your workflows, and then the technology is sort of the last piece of that puzzle. And it really is on a per community or per development basis. Because what we've seen, and we have hundreds and thousands of maps deployed now, hundreds of self-guided tour maps and thousands of maps, is that every property is so different, and that there really isn't a way to just apply a single solution. And I think we've learned that with our partnership with SmartRent, as we're getting client feedback, we're having to adapt very quickly based on the specific requirements of the physical location, and that has to do with getting access. What are people allowed to tour? Are they allowed to tour amenity spaces? Is it a model unit, or as Leigh said, is it the actual unit that somebody will be renting? Which we also are hearing a lot of feedback that is the preference of the renter, because you're providing them enough content through virtual tours already that they get a great understanding after visiting the website, and really they just want to go and experience what it's like to physically be there. And we're getting feedback that it's not as important in a lot of cases to go visit all of the amenity spaces. It's just they want to see where they're going to live, similar to purchasing a home.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Brianna, could you address? I know that Cortland has a sophisticated marketing strategy and engagement strategy with prospective residents. Can you talk about how this self-guided tour technology fits into sort of your broader engagement strategy, your CRM, and that type of thing?
Yeah, of course. So in regards to kind of our tech stack and how we manage our leads, we have a fairly new CRM system that just came out not just came out on the market, but fairly new. And so we have actually worked with SmartRent and then our CRM system to make sure that that's integrated. So as we do have people come and self-tour and start that process of looking at that unit on their own, we seamlessly have all that information coming over into our CRM. So then our on-site teams can continue to nurture and look at all the information that we're capturing from the SmartRent engagement that we have with that prospect, and have them then follow up accordingly and actually be able to nurture that lead and move them through the sales process. So being able to actually have SmartRent and our CRM system linked together in a way really helps us to be able to actually push that lead through from the initial tour to continued engagement, hopefully closing on that lead. But it's great too, because even that there's an integration on the front end that's helped us to be more scalable with the system. And so with our PMS system linking into SmartRent and actually Engrain as well, we're able to push all of our unit information over to both SmartRent for self-guided touring and then the maps. So we have real up-to-date information about all of our units, our availability, the pricing. And so with that, instead of having to manually manage that in any type of sense, that's all seamlessly integrated between the systems. And so everywhere a customer goes and looks, they're seeing the same information, the same content, which helps to create more of a consistent journey for our customers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's, I think it wasn't always evident to me, certainly individually, or even to SmartRent, about, for every one lease you sign, you're probably going to have 5 or 10 or 15, people going through the unit. So feeding them into that engagement and nurturing process, obviously will reap a lot of benefits. Leigh, do you have a similar nurturing system in your communities?
We do, and one piece that we're currently adding right now is we're able to separate and identify, which of our prospects did complete self-guided tours versus virtual tours versus in-person tours. So we can actually send them different, more custom email campaigns and nurturing drip campaigns. So that's been really nice. And we actually have a proprietary PMS system. And so it's been really great that Engrain and SmartRent both, have been able to work with our proprietary system, because that's a challenge for us a lot of times. So that's been helpful.
Bree, I should probably know this, but what's your property management system that you utilize?
We utilize RealPage. So
RealPage.
Our property management system, yes.
That's what we did. Okay, makes sense. Okay. Muir, any other observations just from the UK perspective? I know, in the US, this has really taken hold. Any sort of further observations about similarities or differences in the UK?
I think the real one is actually just looking at what's being done over over the water, as they say, and actually just all of that. It's a much more mature marketplace in America. The adoption of this kind of technology is a lot more widespread than we're typically seeing here. In the UK, we're on the verge, it's that infant position really that's growing in its use. So I think we can take a lot of confidence from what has been delivered over the previous years and is tried and tested over in America. So I think that hopefully should be maybe something that we do take forward as a bit of a learning curve. But equally, I think just one other point, which I think is a very valid point with regards to that user journey, is just the fact that actually a lot of that self-guided tours and that onboarding, that initial connection from developer website to first customer interaction on their mobile device actually doesn't require any download of application or any additional software, which typically that kind of a process does require some form of app in order to operate. Obviously, the SmartRent solution is completely URL based, and I think that's a very valid point to possibly mention at this time. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I think that our clients find that they really want to weave this into their existing system, and downloading separate apps, is a relatively cumbersome process. Mm-hmm. I'll make one point, Muir, on having spent a lot of time now in the build to rent sector in the UK, comparing it to the US. One of the things to consider here is connectivity. So on the property, having either community Wi-Fi, which is preferred, or having a good cellular connection is important. The all-important blue dot only follows you if you are connected. so that's something to consider. But in the UK, really in our experience, the connectivity is actually much more consistent and robust in most cases. Whereas in the US, sometimes there are some real gaps, and cellular can drag this down a bit. Maybe Brent, if you wouldn't mind speaking just broadly about the Engrain offering, because again, part of the offering is embedded in self-guided tour, but you have these broader products and services from Engrain. I'm wondering if you could just talk about a typical engagement in terms of, how long it takes to sort of scope out the engagement with clients, implement it, do some of the mapping, and roll it out, and then maybe we can ask for Leigh and Brianna's to chime in on their specific experiences.
Sure. So going back to our sitemap platform, we have the sort of primary use case of it is to be placed on websites. And as I said, we are integrating quite a bit of content into these maps at this point. And particularly in the US, the operators are starting to create a lot of video down to the unit level in some cases, a lot of virtual tours with Matterport videos and other similar things. And so that's put a lot of pressure on our systems to be able to adapt quickly. And so as we're onboarding, and we're onboarding entire portfolios relatively quickly. So just as an example, we can unload 100 property portfolio in around 90 days based on the versatility of the system and based on the integrations that we have with content partners. But then we also have a lot of documentation and APIs. And one of the things that we're pushing for, and I know SmartRent supports and I think is critical for innovation, is the ability to have APIs and integrations so that our teams can work together to solve problems. And for Venterra specifically, they have developed a touchscreen that is in all of their leasing centers that was developed by their in-house team. And so that was an important, and it's on screen here, that was an important part of this integration. And by having open APIs and being able to flex quickly, it allows both renters and then agents who are touring renters the ability to access all of our technology within their technology. And I think that's a great use case, because then we can, whether the journey started at the website or it started in a leasing office, it can be passed from this screen into a user's mobile device and they can be on their way to do the tour. So looking at that journey is very different for each client. And then once we've got that nailed down, our process is essentially gather all the content. If a client needs content, we work with either our partners to do that. And we can add content over time as well. I think that's an important point, is the maps are changing as content is added. Once they're done, we work with website providers and other partners that a client's working with to implement the maps. And then we have a whole other side of this and business intelligence that I wasn't planning on getting into, but it's not just for the renting process. We believe that there should be maps in all real estate applications, and that's really starting to take hold.
Great. Leigh, can you comment on your implementation process in terms of sort of the time and the level and nature of effort in terms of identifying what you wanted in these areas, and then how long it took to get to where you are?
Sure. As and Brent mentioned, we did start off with using this a lot more in our community stages, which is what our on-site touchscreens are. As far as setup, we've done kind of a rollout, kind of put our properties in different chunks. We have 60 apartment communities across our portfolio. So, gathering the content, as Brent mentioned, is probably one of the biggest challenges for us. We have a lot of content, videos, amenities, features. Luckily, the integrations are able to take care of all of that update, all the updates to the website and the community stage. But I recommend having someone that's very knowledgeable in your content, whether you recruit on-site teams to help with gathering certain things that they would know best about their communities that you want to highlight, and or having someone centralized to just manage the content creation, and then doing a phased rollout effect. Is a little bit more consumable, just from our end, overseeing and getting everyone trained and updated, and allows our developers to keep up with the updates as well.
Makes sense. Bree, how about your experience?
We've had a very similar experience. We also are rolling out our maps in phases. So we have about 170 communities now that we're trying to roll out, and I would think we have about 70 done and another like 50 very close to it. So the Engrain team's been wonderful to work with. They've helped us to get all the content from our sites to put onto our maps. They worked very, very quickly to get the maps redrawn for us and then the interactive maps up. And honestly, at that point, it's on us. And our team is, if anything, the ones that hold up the process. So definitely get, as Leigh said, to get the communities involved to make sure that they can review in a timely manner. And then you have someone centralized managing it all. To really push it through. because the fact that we've gotten 70 maps up and running within just a few months definitely was something that we didn't think we'd get to when we initially started that engagement.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you for that background. Any other topics from any of you that you wanted to touch on or feel that we may have missed in sort of overviewing this technology and how you've applied it?
I can offer one way. I don't know if you're asking us or Muir, but one way that I can say that we're looking forward to trying to use this a little bit more in overlapping with the SmartRent is, as a revenue generator, we're able to, highlight garages or carports or something that are really close to the actual apartment. So that's been pretty cool, and we're looking forward to expanding on that. Just like I said, as a revenue generator, identify availability really close to your apartment. So I think that's missed sometimes.
We need to talk about our parking application, Leigh. So
I know.
Make sure that we follow up in that. But that's a good point. I think you're talking about, highlighting those amenities and then doing it in a granular way that's relevant to a particular unit or particular renter so that they can, visualize those opportunities and maximize revenue. That's excellent point. Brianna, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, actually, there was one of the comments that Muir had a little ways back when he mentioned using SmartRent and self-guided tours when it comes to peak times. I think that's one of the use cases that at least we are very excited to continue with, this post-COVID, when we get back to normal, we do have people walking in. One of the things we've been talking about is really being able to harness and use this technology that if we have 3 people walking at a time and our teams are busy with other people, that this is now a way to allow those tours to happen and create kind of that efficiency on site to be able to have higher peaks of traffic and actually handle them and allow people to go still see the models, the units, the amenities without having to tell them, oh, sorry, you need to wait 30 minutes and we'll get to you. So this is a way to create a better experience for our on-site associates to be able to manage their time better, as well as kind of make sure they have an efficient use of their time and still provide that good experience to the customer.
Yep. Muir and I in the UK, we're working on a project right now. He mentioned holiday parks, and there are these vacation, areas, and literally there are 2,000 caravans that get rented for a week at a time, and families are checking in at different times. So literally, you have these huge bottlenecks where it's not uncommon for a family to be in the check-in process for an hour or an hour and a half. And if you've ever seen my family check in on vacation with my 3 children, that's not a pretty sight. So this particular client is looking at not only the self-guided check-in piece, but also some of those touchscreen technologies that can help deal with those surges in demand. And Brent, I didn't mean for this to be a requirements session, but it also occurs to me, one of the other use cases that I think we can work on is not just for self-guided tours, but within SmartRent, one of the nice features is self-service around providing access to guests. And just like a new resident, a guest doesn't know where they're going. And so if we can make guests blue dots so that they know where to find the amenities and they know how to get in and out a little bit more seamlessly, I think that's, maybe an extension of what we can do together. So every time I talk to Brent, there's a new request from a technology.
I think, and it's funny because as Leigh was talking, I've already been having conversations with her team about what they call rentables, which is parking and storage and other things that renters can rent in addition to the apartment. And we're already making maps for those things. And so one of the important points is, and I think Bree touched on this too, just based on capacity to do these projects. So we, one of our use cases is to turn the map over to the resident when they move in, because then they can use it for guests or deliveries or any of those types of applications. And that's all technology that we can support today, but it's a question of, are our clients ready? Are our partners ready? And we just sort of have to accept over time, phasing this in and iterating.
Yeah, but I think one of the nice things is that the technology is all foundational. So once you have this foundation, adding so that the delivery drivers, which as we all know, we had no idea how those would take off, adding that incremental functionality, building on what we've done together. So, in our application, we can provide codes to those drivers that are, set to a particular time frame. And again, drivers don't know where they're going. So rather than having them wander the halls of your beautiful build-to-rent property, it's nice if we can help them do their job a little more efficiently. So I think the future is exciting in all those respects. Well, Brent and Muir, I wanted to thank you, and Bree and Leigh. I think you guys, that there's a ring there. I think there's like a podcast of inside multifamily in your future. So really appreciate your insights, and appreciate to, all of those who have attended today. I hope this is useful. If Muir and I can help connect you to the right people, if you have an interest in exploring this for your communities, we'd love to do that. And I did also want to thank the UKAA. Dave Butler just does a tremendous job with the organization, and his team, Lena and others, have done a great job. So we certainly appreciate it, and we will hope that you have a great day.